Who was most likely to improvise during a scene?
Sacha Baron Cohen.
Right now, you look like Okay, come on, we got it.
I can understand why she's frustrated. That's how I feel watching her interviews.
How do you feel about the impact that she's having on young Black girls? And I'm going to be completely honest, on Black women.
You know, this is yet another area that's getting vibrant. It's getting full in the way that it should.
One major development going on now involves more to do with Dominique Thorne going off at the fans yet again in the midst of the Ironheart ratings disaster.
It's all ego. You would never find me with an ego like that. Not with my fallopian tubes.
Comes to the numbers. Spoiler alert. Kind of exactly what we expect. Ironheart ratings in the gutter.
Now, Thorne delivered the following in a desperate play to salvage the series. I think Marvel fans, she says, just need to take a step back and to stop focusing on our support for both diversity and LGBTQ and claiming that as some form of a hidden message.
Natalie AI thing seems utterly preposterous and ridiculous, and even for an MCU show, I'm finding it to be a little bit of a bridge too far to go. The Heist crew, all lame. Every single one of them, all lame.
And so in this, I'm not sure what they're meant to be, because this character isn't to be confused with Slug.
Slug, our hacker extraordinaire.
Who is also the exact opposite in the same show. I'm really confused.
Was a massive disappointment in the ratings for them, certainly. We do know, when you go and you look at through these charts, the first couple days it was out, because we have 3 days of Ironheart in these numbers, just like we had 3 days of Daredevil in these numbers. And Daredevil in those first 3 days had over 300 million minutes watched. So, and that was with less possible runtime than something like Ironheart. Yet we know that it hasn't matched that.
Now is that we know that Kevin Feige and Bob Iger, they're also engaging in damage control about this show, saying things like, don't trust the negative reviews, don't trust the trades, stuff like that.
Ironheart is the biggest L of Marvel of all time. The reactions are just spectacular. Supposedly he's smarter than Tony Stark, bites an electric wire, sells her soul to gain magic powers, uses new powers to steal. What did the writers mean by this? Smoke detector beeps.
And they were doing everything in their power to really prop up this show. That's exactly why they had RDJ, Robert Downey Jr., some weeks ago going on talk shows to really say that Riri is the best thing to the MCU to represent the legacy of Tony Stark.
Was Dominique Thorne secretly the reason Ironheart flopped? When Marvel Studios announced Ironheart, fans were hyped. This was supposed to be the rise of Riri Williams, the tech genius who inherited Tony Stark's legacy. Expectations were sky high, but what fans didn't expect was the chaos that would unfold behind the scenes.
It deserves your attention. Ironheart deserves your attention. That's how I knew. I was like, oh, they are desperate to get people to watch this show. But after I did my reaction, I kept getting, hey, it wasn't that bad. I just watched it. Hey, I just watched the first 3 episodes. It wasn't that bad.
The show didn't just underperform, it collapsed under the weight of its own ambition. Critics slammed the pacing, the writing, and most notably, Dominique Thorne's performance.
Not only is she incredibly controlling, but she's a bitch about it to everybody who works for her when things inevitably start spiraling.
Oh my God, she is so full of it. This is not what.
But now, in a shocking twist, comedian and actor Sacha Baron Cohen, who played the mysterious and long-awaited villain Mephisto, has come forward with dangerous claims. In a quiet interview that has since blown up across social media, Cohen didn't hold back. He says there was one person responsible for the bad environment on set, one person who allegedly tried to take over the production, and that person was Dominique Thorne.
Ironheart might be one of the worst executed ideas ever in the MCU, because under all that garbage was actually potential.
He describes a workplace that felt less like a creative collaboration and more like a dictatorship, where crew were walking on eggshells, where directors were second-guessed, and where actors were allegedly forced to tiptoe around a rising star who already believed she had full control. This isn't just about one bad performance or a failed Marvel project. It's about power, ego, and what happens when a star gets too big, too fast. And if what Sacha is saying is true, it might just be the end of Dominique Thorne's career in the MCU.
How do you feel about the impact that she's having on young Black girls? And I'm going to be completely honest on Black women.
You know, this is yet another area that's getting vibrant. It's getting full in the way that it should.
Let's break down exactly what went wrong with Ironheart, how Dominique allegedly turned the set into her personal kingdom, and what Sacha Baron Cohen revealed that has fans calling for a full investigation. Marvel had a plan. After Tony Stark's emotional goodbye in Endgame, they needed a successor, someone brilliant, young, and marketable. That's where Riri Williams came in. Introduced in Black Panther, Wakanda Forever, Dominique Thorne's character was meant to be the next big thing. A black, female tech genius with her own iron suit and a bold new vision. The premise was strong, the hype was real, and Marvel poured millions into the production of Ironheart. Merchandise was prepped, interviews lined up, and the series was scheduled to drop as one of the MCU's biggest streaming events of the year. But when it finally aired, the energy changed fast.
Yeah, and it's like the real Tony Stark gets like back somehow, and there's like a moment where she's flying through and he's like, who is that? And she's like, I'm Ironheart, Mr. Stark. And he's like, I like that girl. And then he like goes to do something else. Like that would be like the level of something that I think would possibly happen.
Fans were confused. The story was muddled. Dominique's portrayal felt flat to many, not because of the character, but because of what people described as a lack of emotion, stiffness, and strange overconfidence that didn't match the tone of the show. The worst part? Critics were saying the same thing. Early reviews called the show directionless, with multiple reviewers pointing out that the character of Riri lacked development and consistency. It was as if no one on set could agree on who she was supposed to be. Genius inventor, angsty teen, fearless hero? The tone was all over the place.
There is also way too much focus on the LGBTQ community by the fandom in a negative manner, and it just needs to go away, I think, for a healthy story to grow, and for Riri to really share her limelight with...
Then, the numbers started to drop. Viewership tanked after just the second episode. Engagement on social media disappeared, and fans who had been waiting for Ironheart since her first MCU appearance began to turn on the show entirely. Behind the scenes, rumors were already swirling. Reddit threads began to pop up. People asked, what happened? How did something with this much promise fall apart so fast? And that's when whispers about Dominique's behavior on set started to leak. But those whispers turned into headlines when someone who had stayed silent, someone who had worked directly with her, finally spoke up. When Sacha Baron Cohen was announced as the actor playing Mephisto, the internet exploded. After years of fan theories, memes, and fake-outs, Marvel had finally cast one of its most mysterious villains. And not just any actor, a comedy legend, known for pushing boundaries and calling out the absurd. But after the initial buzz, something strange happened. Sacha went dark. No major press, no Comic-Con appearances, no interviews promoting Ironheart. For someone playing such a highly anticipated role, his silence was deafening. Fans assumed it was part of the mystery, a clever Mephisto misdirect maybe. But now, we know the truth was far messier. In a sit-down podcast interview months after Ironheart aired, Sacha finally told his side of the story, and he didn't sugarcoat it. He claimed that working on Ironheart was one of the most frustrating professional experiences of his career. Not because of Marvel, not because of the writing, but because of one person. Dominique, he said, acted like she was directing the whole show. According to Cohen, from the very first table read, Dominique made it clear she wasn't just there to play Riri. She believed she was leading the entire production. He described moments where she overruled directors, challenged rewrites, and insisted on changes mid-shoot. And when crew members pushed back, she allegedly doubled down, making them feel like they didn't understand the character the way she did. Sacha hinted that even producers were reluctant to challenge her. There was this energy, he said, where everyone was afraid to say no to her. It wasn't collaborative, it was controlled. At one point, he claimed he considered walking away from the project entirely. I was brought in to play a role, he said, but halfway through, I felt like I was just watching someone else hijack the show. And perhaps most dangerous of all, Sacha suggested that his role as Mephisto was cut down during post-production not for story reasons, but because he refused to reshoot under what he called controlled creative conditions. If that's true, it means Marvel didn't just lose its villain, it lost a huge chunk of its storyline, all because of off-camera drama, and Sacha isn't the only one who felt that way. Sacha Baron Cohen didn't just speak out, he dropped a bombshell. What started as a quiet conversation on a niche podcast turned into one of the most shocking Marvel-related interviews in recent memory. It was casual at first. Sacha was joking about being cast as Mephisto, how weird it was to go from Borat to a literal demon, how he originally thought Marvel reached out to him by mistake. But then the mood shifted. The host asked, was Ironheart fun to work on? And there was a long pause. Then Sacha said something no one expected. You ever work on a project where one person thinks they're the director, the star, the producer, and the studio head all at once? And just like that, it was on. He went on to describe the environment on set as tense, awkward, and honestly kind of scary at times. According to him, Dominique Thorne wasn't just a assertive. She was overpowering. He claimed she routinely took over creative discussions, rewriting lines in the moment, disregarding direction, and even arguing with department heads over lighting and costuming. There was this one day, Sacha said, we were shooting this key scene, a real Mephisto moment, and she stopped mid-take, turned to the director and said, "No, this isn't how Riri would react. We need to change this." He said the director just stood there, unsure of what to say. It wasn't a one-off. Sacha said this happened regularly, and not just to him. Other actors, camera operators, even the assistant directors were all subject to her corrections. She was treating people like NPCs in her own video game, he said, half joking. But the laughter didn't last long. He claimed that by week 3, some of the crew started referring to her behind closed doors as the Iron Dictator. Worse, he said that when anyone pushed back, Dominique would either shut down or escalate, turning disagreements into what he called full-blown confrontations. And according to Sacha, the studio was well aware. He suggested that producers were already planning how to handle the fallout before the show even wrapped. You could feel it, he said. They knew this wasn't going to end well. It's one thing for a performance to fall flat. It's another thing entirely when a co-star, especially someone with Sacha's level of fame and experience, paints such a chaotic picture of what was happening behind the scenes. But as wild as his claims were, they weren't the only sign something was seriously wrong on set. While most fans saw only the final product, a confusing, uneven series, those who worked on Ironheart saw the cracks forming from day one. Multiple insiders, speaking anonymously to small industry blogs and YouTube leakers, began confirming what Sacha hinted at. The production was riddled with conflict, and at the center of it all was Dominique Thorne. According to one report, entire shooting days were lost because of creative disagreements. Some scripts were being rewritten the morning of filming, and not by the writers, by Dominique herself. Sources claimed she regularly demanded to see the latest script revisions and would rewrite her lines if she didn't like the tone. She'd literally grab a pen and start marking up the page right in front of everyone, one crew member allegedly told an insider blog. Then she'd hand it back and say, "This is how Riri would say it, no discussion." This wasn't just annoying, it was expensive. Marvel had already been tightening budgets after the Quantumania backlash, and the delays on Ironheart weren't helping. Each time a scene had to be reshot or reblocked because of on-the-spot rewrites, it meant burning through time and money the production couldn't afford to lose. And it didn't stop with the scripts. There was a now infamous night shoot that insiders claim had to be shut down completely. The scene involved Mephisto confronting Riri for the first time, a major turning point in the story. But according to reports, Dominique refused to perform it as written. She allegedly clashed with the director over her character's reaction, stormed off set after a heated exchange, and refused to return until the scene was fixed. The crew waited for hours. Nothing was shot. The night was scrapped. One assistant director reportedly quit the following week. A camera operator was reassigned mid-production, and a makeup artist posted cryptically on Instagram, saying, "Sometimes the costume isn't the only armor people wear on set." Even actors who weren't directly involved started noticing the tension. There was less laughter between takes, fewer off-camera bonding moments. The usual Marvel family vibe, gone. It got so bad that one executive flew in from LA to observe the set in person. That kind of intervention almost never happens, but it did for Ironheart. Fans had no idea just how much drama was boiling beneath the surface. All they saw was a half-baked final product. But if you knew what was happening behind the camera, it made perfect sense. And if you think this chaos was bad, wait until you hear how Marvel tried to clean it all up before the show even dropped. By the time filming wrapped, Marvel executives weren't celebrating. They were scrambling. What was supposed to be one of their boldest, most progressive projects had become a slow-moving disaster. Internally, buzz around Ironheart had gone from excitement to concern. And it wasn't just about the quality, it was about the behavior. According to sources close to the production, Marvel had quietly flagged the show as at risk months before its premiere. There were reports of unusual rewrites, uncooperative dynamics between the lead and the creative team, and, most concerning, a divided set. One camp followed the actual directors, the other, Dominique Thorne. In a closed-door meeting allegedly held just weeks after final production, Marvel higher-ups reviewed early rough cuts of the series and were stunned by how disjointed it felt. One report says that Kevin Feige himself was disappointed with what he saw, calling it unfocused and out of sync with the tone of the broader MCU. So what did Marvel do? They went into silent damage control. First, they scaled back the marketing. Compared to shows like Loki or Moon Knight, the promo campaign for Ironheart was noticeably quiet. Trailers were delayed, cast interviews were limited. The show's social media rollout was borderline invisible. Then came the edits. Sacha Baron Cohen's role as Mephisto was originally designed to stretch across multiple episodes, but in the final cut, his screen time was slashed. According to Sacha himself, entire scenes were left on the cutting room floor, not because they didn't fit the story, but because he refused to reshoot under what he called unworkable conditions. Marvel decided it was cleaner to just remove the scenes altogether. A drastic move, especially considering how long fans had waited for Mephisto's MCU debut. Even Dominique's own arc was allegedly altered. Rumors suggest that her character was softened in post-production, and several scenes showing her in leadership or confrontational moments were quietly trimmed to avoid reinforcing what Marvel was now aware had become a real-life problem: the perception that their star had become too dominant on and off screen. And then came the non-disclosure agreements. Sources claim crew and secondary cast were reminded very clearly that they were still bound by NDAs. Any leaks, even subtle ones, would trigger legal action. Marvel wasn't taking any chances. In the end, they chose silence. No public statement, no official comment on the rumors, just quiet edits, minimal promotion, and a hope that Ironheart would survive long enough to justify a season 2. But silence from Marvel didn't stop the speculation, especially when fans started connecting the dots from subtle but revealing signs shared by the cast themselves. If there's one thing Marvel actors are trained to do, it's keep secrets. But after Ironheart dropped, it didn't take long for fans to notice something strange about the cast's behavior and the things they weren't saying. There was no celebratory press tour, no heartfelt thank you posts, no emotional behind-the-scenes stories. For a project this high profile, the silence was loud, but beneath the quiet, small cracks began to show. In one Instagram Live, a supporting actor was asked about working with Dominique. His answer? Riri's an intense character, and so was the process. He smiled, then immediately moved on to a different topic. It felt rehearsed, or maybe just careful. Another cast member liked a tweet that read, "Ironheart had so much potential until ego took the wheel." The tweet didn't name names, but fans took notice. It was unlike to hours later, but the screenshot had already gone viral. And then there were the unfollows. Eagle-eyed fans noticed that Dominique had quietly unfollowed several of her co-stars after the show aired. No drama, no announcements, just clean cuts. One co-star returned the gesture a day later. No one said why. A crew member posted a vague TikTok showing a blurry behind-the-scenes photo from set overlaid with the text, "Sometimes the hardest part of a job isn't the work, it's surviving the people." Comments flooded in. The video was deleted the next morning. The subtle distancing didn't stop there. During a red carpet event for a different MCU project, a journalist asked another Ironheart cast member if they'd work with Dominique again. Their reply? "I think we all grow and learn from every experience." A classic PR answer. Polite, vague, but it didn't exactly scream enthusiasm. None of this is solid proof. No one has come out and directly accused Dominique of anything, at least not publicly, but the hints are there. The avoidance, the lack of interaction, the quiet corrections and nervous glances in interviews. It's all starting to add up. And when you place it alongside what Sacha Baron Cohen revealed, the picture becomes much clearer. This wasn't just an awkward set. This was a fractured cast trying to move forward without setting off a PR time bomb. But Dominique wasn't staying silent either. And what she did say left fans more confused than ever. With rumors flying and Sacha Baron Cohen's comments going viral, fans waited for one thing: Dominique Thorne's response. And eventually it came, but not in the way anyone expected. Instead of a press conference or a live interview, Dominique issued a short written statement posted to her Instagram story. No video, no comments, just a black background with plain white text. The stories being told are baseless. "I'm proud of the work we did on Ironheart, and it was a team effort from beginning to end. I wish nothing but love and respect to everyone involved." That was it. No mention of Sacha, no mention of specific events, just a carefully crafted response that said everything and nothing. The statement disappeared after 24 hours, but screenshots flooded X, Reddit, and Instagram. Fans were split. Some defended her, saying the backlash was unwarranted and possibly rooted in bias. Others pointed out that she didn't actually deny the behavior, only called the stories baseless, a word vague enough to leave everything open to interpretation. And then came the real twist. Dominique went quiet. Again, no follow-ups, no interviews. She skipped a scheduled podcast appearance, then canceled a panel at a fan convention last minute, citing schedule conflicts. Marvel, meanwhile, offered no comment, maintaining their silence as the firestorm continued online. But what caught everyone's attention next wasn't what she said, it was what she did. Hours after her statement, fans noticed she had wiped several posts from her Instagram feed, including one of the original behind-the-scenes photos from Ironheart. She also turned off comments on all recent posts and unfollowed several Marvel fan accounts. And then there was the strange repost, a quote from a motivational speaker that read, "Sometimes being misunderstood is the price of leadership." Was it a passive-aggressive response to Sacha, a shot at Marvel, or just a coincidence? Either way, the damage was done. What was meant to calm things down only raised more questions, and with no clear explanation, fans were left piecing things together themselves. For someone who was being positioned as the face of Marvel's next generation, Dominique was suddenly retreating from the spotlight, and no one from the Ironheart camp was stepping up to defend her. The silence was starting to feel like confirmation. And that leads us to the question that's now hanging over the entire MCU. Is this the end of Dominique Thorne's Marvel career? Dominique Thorne was supposed to be Marvel's next big name, a breakout role in Wakanda Forever, a lead in her own Disney Plus series, a fresh face for a franchise in need of new heroes. She had everything lined up: talent, timing, and the support of one of the biggest cinematic universes on the planet. But somewhere between the hype and the premiere, things unraveled. What began as creative disagreements turned into full-blown set chaos. What could have been a groundbreaking performance turned into a controversial one. And now, with Sacha Baron Cohen's public allegations, insider leaks, and a cast that seems more distant than united, Dominique's once promising future is on shaky ground. Her defenders say she was simply passionate, that she stood up for her character and challenged the system, something male actors have done for years without backlash. And maybe that's true. Maybe the noise around Ironheart has more to do with miscommunication and pressure than real misconduct, but the silence speaks volumes. Marvel hasn't announced a second season. Dominique hasn't been attached to any future MCU projects, and unlike other Marvel stars, her name isn't showing up at conventions or press events. In fact, some fans noticed something chilling in a recent Marvel lineup update. Ironheart was was no longer front and center. Her character wasn't listed in upcoming crossover plans. No Avengers, no young heroes, nothing confirmed. Is Marvel cutting ties quietly, or simply taking a step back to reassess? Either way, the once rising star of Riri Williams has dimmed fast. In an industry where perception is everything, and image matters just as much as talent, Dominique may now be facing the hardest chapter of her career, the comeback. Whether or not she deserves a second chance is up for debate. But one thing's certain, when Sacha Baron Cohen exposed what he saw behind the scenes, it didn't just spark a scandal. It exposed the cracks in an empire that's supposed to be invincible, and reminded everyone that even the biggest stars can fall.